Trina, and today I'm doing a book review for The Martian by Andy Weir. This is going to be a spoiler-free review, but if you want to skip around to different sections, there are timestamps down in the description below. I'm going to start out with an overall summary of what this book is about, and then I will let you know who I think might like this book or why you might want to check it out, and then I'll move into my more specific rating and thoughts on the book. So The Martian is about an astronaut, Mark Watney, who is on a manned mission to Mars. Their job while they're up there is basically to collect some rock samples and do some soil experiments, and they're going to be living up there for a couple of weeks, so they have limited supplies. But only a few days into their mission, there's this big dust storm that starts threatening to basically damage their return ship. So they decide they need to abandon their mission and get back to the ship so they can leave Mars before the ship gets destroyed. So as they're heading to the ship, the windstorm knocks loose an antenna which pierces Mark through his suit, and he flies off into the storm. The rest of his crew thinks that he is dead because they saw his suit get punctured, so thinking that he has been killed, they leave without him so the rest of the group can survive. Little did they know, though, that Mark did not actually die. Miraculously, his suit did not completely rupture, and when Mark wakes up, he realizes he is all alone on Mars. And because the antenna was destroyed in that windstorm, he has no way of contacting the rest of his crew or contacting NASA back on Earth. And even if they knew he was alive, they would not be able to get back to him until 4 years from now. So basically this book is exploring Mark's quest to basically just stay alive on Mars as long as possible and hopefully figure out some kind of communication with Earth to let them know, hey, please come back for me. This book is told in two different narratives. There are some diary entries of Mark himself told in first person, where he is detailing what he's been up to each and every day that he's been stuck on Mars. And I was actually surprised. I think about 50 pages in, we cut to a third person narrative of people on Earth, like people that work with NASA. And we also get a few scenes that are from his crew that left him behind that are returning to Earth, and how they are processing the loss of a crew member. I have to say that the extra viewpoints of the people back on Earth and how they were dealing with finding out about this whole tragedy and how they were going to handle like news coverage of it, it added such depth to the story. It made it feel so much more real. This book definitely explores the theme of humanity and the links to which people will band together to help other people out. It explores like what it takes mentally to survive a horrible situation like this, and just the tough decisions and sacrifices that people were making all along the way trying to help Mark survive. That's the premise of the book, and I definitely think you'll like it if you like other space books. However, this is unlike any other space book I've read. The most similar feeling space book to The Martian that I've read before has been 172 Hours on the Moon by Johan Harstad, but 172 Hours is definitely a horror book, and this one is not horror. And yes, there is always the looming possibility that anything could go wrong at any moment, and just think about what kind of a horrible death you would have if you were stuck on an isolated planet. That's always kind of looming over this character's head, and it is really freaky. You can definitely get in your mind about it, but the main purpose of this book is not to be like a shock and scare book. It's not a horror story, it's a survival story. And so I have also compared it to Not a Drop to Drink by Mindy McGinnis, which is just totally a survival story trying to find food and water. That's basically the same thing that Mark is doing here. So I would recommend this to anyone that likes a good post-apocalyptic story as well. If you liked the movie Apollo 13 or Interstellar, you would like this one too. If you don't like space books, you probably might be a little bit freaked out by it, but overall it was just an amazing survival story, and it really has a great message about humanity and just perseverance. The only thing I think might trip up some readers is that some of Mark's log entries are very science heavy. Like, he talks a lot about chemistry and how to pull hydrogen atoms out of the air and all this stuff, and I've heard some people, including my husband, say sometimes you just have to skim over those parts, and I did not want to skim over anything because I didn't want to miss anything, because even though some of it was lost on me and I didn't really understand what he was saying, it really put it into perspective of what a difficult position he was in. I absolutely recommend it because this is one of my favorite books of the year. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It definitely deserves more than 5 stars, to be honest. I did briefly say in another video that this might be my favorite book of my entire life, and when I've had people say, are you serious? Like, your whole life? Kind of. Like, yeah, obviously there's Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and books like that, but I read those more than 5 years ago, so at least favorite book of the past 5 years. I could solidly say that. It gave me such an incredible emotional experience and made me feel so in touch with what it means to be human and like what we have in our lives today, that what would we do if we didn't have all of that. Like, this character, he literally has to make water out of thin air. And another thing that is so great about this book is that this is real science fiction. There's a lot of science speak and a lot of chemistry and a lot of good information about how NASA and space travel actually work, and that just lends so much more of a realistic feeling to the story. It really makes you feel like you were there and that you were going through the same things. It's just such an impossible situation and thing after thing goes wrong, and Mark Watney is the end all of characters. Like, if there was ever an apocalypse, I want Mark Watney on my team because this guy was so smart. Obviously he's very intelligent because he's an astronaut, so he's had a lot of training. It just blew my mind at how intelligent he was and how much perseverance he had and his whole mental mindset. Obviously he's not a real person, but like I said, because it's such a real science sci-fi book, he felt like such a real person. Overall, this book just left me with my heart pounding, and I just bawled my eyes out when I was done with this book. And that's not to say that this is a sad book. It just is a very impactful book, or at least it was for me. It hit me right in the feels. I really loved it. I really wanted to put a review up, even though this is mostly a fangirl review. But yes, I loved the book and would highly recommend it. If you've read The Martian, let me know what you thought about it. Were you as impressed with Mark's perseverance and him as a character as I was? And let me know if you're excited about the movie, because I am so excited to see this come to life on the big screen. I think it's going to be done so well. I cannot wait. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye! I've been holding this book the entire time. Like, that's weird.